Anne Cooper is the Vice President of Global Customer Care at Board International. She started her career in sales and has an MBA with an emphasis in brand management and marketing. She has worked in loyalty marketing for Visa and managed relationships with vendors on behalf of Visa. She then transitioned into account management, which is now called customer success. Afterward, she made a switch to operations at Best Buy Corporate, where she learned the customer care side of the business and managed a large organization focused on phone, in-home store, and remote delivery of service and support. However, she decided to return to her customer success roots in a software company because she missed direct customer roles. At Anaplan, she was fortunate to merge these two roles, allowing her to work with customers while applying her love for operations and support delivery. In this episode of the podcast, Anne Cooper discusses the significance of customer care in product management. Anne Cooper shares her career journey from marketing and advertising to customer care at a large corporation and her transition into the software industry. The conversation covers the importance of empathy, collaboration, and understanding customer pain points to drive product improvements. Anne Cooper talks about key metrics in customer support, the proactive management of products post-launch, and the challenges of orphaned features. She stresses the value of customer feedback, the need for humility in product management, and the importance of a collaborative relationship between product and customer support teams. Anne Cooper's assertive style and cultural adaptability in her ascent to the suite are also discussed, highlighting her dedication to customer care and the emotional aspects of support work.
Welcome to Product Perspectives, the podcast for product people that gives a voice to their stakeholders, hosted by Magali Pellissier. Each weekly episode shows you the other side of the product with interviews of the people who contribute to making products a success. They are engineers, writers, marketers, support analysts, UX designers, or even salespeople. Not only will they get the credit they deserve, but they will share their perspectives on what makes a good product and product manager. Stakeholder management is a key skill for product managers. So just as you're obsessed with listening to your customers, let's hear from your stakeholders.
Good. So today, for my first guest of the year, 2024, and the start of season 2, I've got Anne Cooper as a guest. Oh, you can wave now. We're on video.
I know. I'm taking full advantage of multimedia.
Right. So, well, we know each other. We've worked together in a previous life. And we reconnected recently, and I'm so happy to have you as a guest because there's so much to learn from you. So let's get started.
No pressure on my side, right?
No, exactly. No. We're going to spend 3 hours recording and just editing out everything that's wrong about it. Okay, so let's start with your professional journey. And when you sent me your bio, I was like, oh, wow, you have done so many different things. And I think this is very valuable when you work in a tech organization to have worked into different roles, to understand and have that empathy with the people you work with. And somehow that is what the podcast is trying to do, is to say, okay, let's meet with those people who are part of this environment to understand a bit better how they work. So do you want to go through a bit your journey and how you ended up in your current role?
Sure. Well, and it's funny because I always think that my journey is standard, but when I say it out loud, I guess it does have some twists and turns that are a little bit different. But to your point, I think that's what makes a more holistic view of a customer when you kind of understand different functions that impact their journey. So, I started out actually in a sales trajectory. And I had my first role was in sales, which was great for a couple of reasons. But I really realized quickly that I didn't enjoy those short-term relationships with customers. Sales has their very important role up front, but I knew that I kind of liked that longer standing relationship. So I shifted a little bit more into my background from an educational perspective, and I started working at a marketing and advertising company. And I was lucky enough to work for Visa and manage their loyalty marketing programs and their relationships with their vendors. And what I really liked about that experience is, although we called it account management back in the late 90s, last century, early 2000s, and now it's called, customer success. So I really enjoyed working in that space because I didn't feel like I was ever on a different team from my clients or my customers. I felt like I was an extension of their team. So I thought that was really fun. And then I made kind of a big shift out of the advertising and marketing world, really into Best Buy corporates. Best Buy, for your listeners, if you didn't know, it's a very large corporation here in the US, an electronics retailer. So I moved over there, and in under a year, they did something unprecedented, which was they offered everybody at corporate, regardless of your tenure or your level, if you were to quit, everybody would get paid, like at the minimum 6 months in one paycheck if you proactively quit. It was in 2008 when the market was really bad. But I had only been there, I'd been there less than a year. So I wanted to stick around, but because so many leaders left the organization because of how amazing that package deal was, the head of customer care came to me and asked if I would take over managing the experience across the phone, our online bestbuy.com, as well as in-store and in-home services around computing. And I remember the conversation like it was yesterday, because it's one of those pivotal moments in your career. And I said to her very straightforward, and if you know me, but as your listeners get to know me, I don't have much of a filter. And so I said directly to her, does it bother you that I have zero operations or customer care experience? And she said, it doesn't bother me if it doesn't bother you. So within a moment, I shifted from being kind of on the CS and marketing side of the house into the beautiful world of operations and customer care. And I think, I spent the next 8 or 10 years of my career kind of honing those skills. But then I wanted to go back to CS because I did really miss working with customers directly. That brought me into the software world, which is a great switch in my trajectory, because in 2016 this hybrid role came up where I got to be within the customer success organization, but also lead operational teams. So I can make promises to customers and then actually impact how it played out in the back end. Because you know how it goes. Like, you have people standing in front of customers, and then you have to go back and talk to the people that make it happen. And that sometimes has a disconnect. So luckily for me, from 2016 into this moment, I've got to be in that perfect hybrid role where I talk to customers every week, sometimes every day. And I also get to manage the operations and the support teams and the training and the community that bring those promises to life. Was that too long-winded? You can tell me.
No, I love the story. My favorite part was when somebody gave you a chance, and because it resonates with my story, right? We both know the person, and I'm going to say his name now, Simon Ritchie, for giving me a chance and said, like, if you have half of the skills and domain knowledge, you can learn the other half, and off you go. And that's how your career changes for the best.
Exactly. Yeah, you can only hire for curiosity, right? That's something you can't train. So you can train most people to do most anything, but being curious and like a high accountable is something different. So that's what allows people to shift across careers, because they're willing to put the work in to learn.
Yeah. And I think that's the type of skills that is going to be essential in a future world. We're going to talk obviously about AI at the end of the podcast, but this is the type of skills that as humans, we absolutely need to thrive in the future of work.
Right. Whether we want to or not, change is coming.
Right. So very good to understand a bit more your journey. And normally you ask me a question towards the end of a podcast, but this time I thought, let's do it now. And the question is not, why are you wearing this jacket?
Yeah, I already asked that off camera.
Which, by the way,
amazing.
for people who listen, I had my end of year party yesterday and I just felt like it. Yeah. Right, but that's another question. And the reason I want to ask you to ask me the question now is because it's quite relevant to the rest of this interview.
Yeah, so my question to you was, even when you approached me originally, was the same question I'm asking now, which is, what makes you want to have someone who works in customer care and experience come on to a product management podcast?
Well, that's a great question. And first of all, it's not someone who works in customer care, it's you. But I had other people in customer care in the podcast as well. And this is exactly the essence of the podcast, right? The essence of a podcast is, as a product manager, nothing happens with just me. I need all those people around me. And we often think just about developers and designers because that's our core team, and that is true. But we have to work with marketing, and we have to work with sales and customer success. And we should work, and I know, unfortunately, a lot of PMs do not, for a variety of reasons, work with the customer care teams, right? And the reason for that is two ways. There's a lot we can learn from you because you are the front line. So you talk to customer on a daily basis, very often very frustrated, as we know, they've got a problem, it's not working. So we can learn a lot from that, and we need to have deep empathy, I think, for your team. I was reading recently, actually, that in contact centers and all that, they've got a huge turnover and high level of stress. I understand it's a very stressful job. And then there's the other side, which is, well, actually, for that, we need to support you. We need to provide you with the information to help you help customers. So whether it's training, whether it's being present as well to answer your questions, but also making the products simple for you to then support. And I remember back when we were working together and I was working with your teams, that we actually involved the support teams into all of our ideation, because at some point we're like, oh no, if you put this button here, we're going to have so many support tickets. I'm like, please don't do that. So this is an example.
Yeah, well, it's critical not to just be reactive when it comes to support, but very proactive. So all product managers should be including their support teams, especially their level 3 support teams. That team that's really highly technical, understands how the product is meant or intended to operate. And then what are the things in the background, the logging you need to properly support it. And like you mentioned, we don't talk to customers just in focus groups or marketing campaigns. We have the privilege, and people think I'm a little crazy when I say this, but we have the privilege of speaking to customers thousands of times a week. And yes, those come in as support cases, and it is a tough job. You have to be able to work with people when they're not at necessarily the height of their experience, right? This means something has gone wrong. But I always say it's easy to work with customers when everything's going right. It's true character that's shown when things are going wrong. And so being able to understand what it is that the customer is going through, there's no better place to start than in your support group.
Yes, I'm sure most product managers are jealous now. They're like, hundreds of customers a week.
I mean, if not thousands. At Best Buy, obviously much bigger scale, but I manage 60 million contacts a year. So that was 60 million chances. Obviously, in my role right now, we're not near that. That's good. But, in my point of view, if I'm a product manager, I want to innovate. And if you want to innovate, most software companies get most of their innovation from when people use it and break it and stress it to its limits. So if you're not listening to how customers are actually using your product and how they're stretching it to its limits, then you're not doing your job as a PM, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's great. Well, that's exactly what I want you to share with this audience of product managers is, how do you see their role? How can they help you? How can they be even more customer focused? Because we talk about, us as PM, we're customer focused. We talk to customers, blah, blah, blah. When I hear you, I'm like, you're more customer focused than we are. You talk to them more than us. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's it's kind of a good question is, why working with product managers is so important. I kind of went through that. The true voice of your customer shines when things aren't going great. Because yes, you want to be proactive, but you also have to look at what the reality is. And sometimes that reality brings you into that new phase of your innovation. Like I think back to the company that you and I worked at together. the founder and creator created it to solve one problem in one industry, which was kind of FP&A or financial planning. And then he was shocked, and I heard it out of his own mouth, that he was just so amazed by the different use cases of supply chain, TQM, all of these different other places that his invention could be created, but he didn't think of it that way. So it takes people outside putting you and pushing you to your limits to find that next innovation.
Good. And in case people aren't quite convinced, there's actually so in every episode, I ask you to ask somebody to ask you a question. Oh gosh, that was a very complicated sentence. But anyway, so we've got Ram, who is the VP of product at Board, which is the company you work for, in case people didn't notice with your background.
I know, there it is, Board International.
Actually, I thought it's very interesting that when we work together, I was an individual contributor, but I really appreciate the fact that you asked somebody, at a higher level, like VP of product, because that really shows, okay, people in product at all levels should understand the importance of working with product managers. So here is the question that Ram has for you. Let's play it.
Hello, this is Ram Narayanan. I'm the VP of the Product Management at Board International. I've known and worked very closely with Ann Cooper for over 8 years. And my question to Ann is, why would a customer care leader need to work closely with the product management? And what does that mean for the customer experience? Thank you.
Yeah, well, and I just adore Ram, because Ram is somebody who's come from a unique background as well. He's come from an operations perspective. He's come from operational excellence groups, and he's come from a technology. And so as the head of product, I have so much confidence in him, because he's taking all of these sound bites and these experience that he has and his high ability to collaborate to make our product better. But a couple of things, right? I think we've said some of these things, but there's always the retroactive stuff we can do. And I think I look at support and customer care in two ways, right? There is the delivery, which is about how fast you answer questions, how well you're responding, how fast you resolve, all of those metrics that you think traditional when you think of a support organization. But if you're a good care organization, you're only spending about 25% of your effort on that delivery and that foundational excellence. You should be spending 75% of your time on being really proactive with those insights, because, product owners and product leaders have a lot going on. And sometimes, no matter how many times you say something, everyone goes to the metrics each month, and it starts to become white noise. And so from a proactive perspective, I've done a couple of things that were hopefully taken the way they were intended, which was fun. But I went to the SVP of product once with a fake bill, like an invoice. And even though I had told him, and I'll use just a random example, like, we're taking this many contacts on password issues and password resets. And even though that was a top call driver, month over month, quarter after quarter, it just was kind of becoming background noise. And so I jokingly, and by coming up with, and we use this metric as well, as contact cost per contact. So you can take your labor costs, divide them out by the reason they're sending in a case or a call or an email or whatever. So I jokingly went and I gave him a bill and an invoice for nearly $1 million, saying, this is how much it's costing us to answer the simple question of password reset. If we only made these tweaks to the product, where if a customer had SSO, we wouldn't present them with the resetting your password, things like that. And so I jokingly gave him $1 million bill to say, I'm happy to keep paying this if you are. And it was that kind of trigger. And from that day forward, we worked really closely together. He always wanted to know what were our top drivers. He was pushing his product directors and product owners to look at that and say, what on this list could we do better, and deflect these cases and improve our customer experience? So I think, Ram's question is great. And he knows, because we work very, very closely together, because our whole shared mission is to make a better customer experience. But also, as shareholders, sometimes in companies, we also have some cost responsibility. So if we can remove costs at the same time as being proactive, innovative for our customer experience, then it's everybody wins.
Like the example, I don't know how many PMs on listening to a podcast would be bold enough to come up with like a fake bill, but that's your approach.
Yeah. Well, when one thing isn't working, if you keep repeating yourself and you're not getting the response, then isn't that the definition of insanity, right? So I try to stay somewhat sane in my world, and working in support, sometimes your sanity is tested.
Definitely. I would recommend, I don't know if it's something that you think is feasible, but I would recommend that some PMs spend maybe, a few days or a few hours, I don't know, maybe a few tickets, even just answering, customer calls and helping them to really experience what it's like.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's amazing. One of my favorite, it's a computer hardware company. But they used to make everybody who started, including the CEO, had to spend 1 to 2 weeks in customer care and customer support. And that is what amazing looks like in any business, because I don't care if you're in marketing or you're in finance or you're in products, wherever, you have an impact on the customer experience. And if you can hear those pain points and then go into your job, I'm hoping that empathy and that customer first voice is always in the back of your head saying, if our invoicing process is clunky, that's a customer experience. So even if you're in accounting and finance and you're not customer facing, it's not true. You still have customer impact. And so I would love to see everybody take a few cases and to kind of look what a customer sounds like and have some empathy for their day-to-day with our products.
Here we go. In case people were thinking about New Year resolution, here's one example.
There you
go. So I really like the fact that you talked about metrics, because every PM wants to be data-driven and wants to look at metrics. But in operations, obviously, you rely on that, right? That's the main thing you're looking at to judge if you're performing well. So you mentioned cost per contact. Are there other metrics that are key for you?
Oh, so tons, right? Like, so in the support space, we talked about some is what, like how fast you're responding, how quickly you're resolving. The CSAT or MPS is always critical. And those are standard. Everybody knows those. From a community perspective, we don't look at just how many visits we've had. And that's obviously a metric we follow, but we want to see how much engagement we're having. So just because you logged in once in a month, are you truly engaged with the content? And then in academy or training, you have to look at not just how many people registered or completed your courses, but what it really good looks like in that area is going back 6 months, a year, and seeing how that learner is applying that knowledge through surveys and other knowledge checks. But I think an interesting one that you just mentioned for PMs is, they spend a lot of time looking at how often their function, feature, their product is performing when it comes to usage and all of these different types of technology around. But how many of these PMs are not just looking at how customers are using it and interfacing, but how much is that product costing the organization to support? Just because you built a really shiny feature or function, it could be costing the company millions of dollars to support it because it wasn't built well, or the interface is wrong, or there's just a really simple issue, a button is in the wrong place causing confusion. So a really good PM would come in and look at not just how many people are using it, but what does it cost the company to actually support it? We had one of those at the company you and I both worked at, and the product was showing really well, like the usage looked really high, but it turned out that it was business maps. I don't know if you remember this, but it was because, and the product owner discovered by looking at all the cases that we were pushing forward, that the usage wasn't nearly as high as he thought it was. It was because the button was right next to another button that was used all the time, and they were accidentally hitting it. And then we found out that the people that were trying to actually use it and putting cases in, they couldn't get it to work the way that it was intended. So it showed really well, but did it function really well? Those are the questions that good PMs are asking themselves.
Yeah, these are great examples, and it's not my product. Well, we know my product did have a lot of support cases, and that's exactly why you're on the podcast today, is because I was so involved in trying to deflect those support cases and trying to make the product better.
And you were a really good example of what it was like to have a good product partner, because not only did you look at cases coming in and take ownership and accountability as to how those were product driven, but you also use the community. You were so active getting it out there that here's our new feature, our function, here's what you're supposed to do. If you have any issues, and you would go back and actually manage what you launched. So often product owners, because they're just like everybody, you know, I'm not giving too much grief, you know, to the product world, because I know how much stress they're under to launch new stuff. But it's really easy to launch things. It's really hard to manage things. So it's a big difference. And I see things get, you know, thrown over the fence. They're live in production, and that PM moves on to a new and fancy shiny object, and leaving, you know, or we used to call it orphan products, right? We had lots of great products that were essentially orphaned by the product owners. And that's just not, you know, at one software company. That's been in every one I worked at. It just happens. We get busy and we don't manage what we launch.
And that's one of my favorite topics to talk about, actually. It's about killing products, and because it comes from that experience when I had to deprecate some older versions and manage that, right? But PMs sometimes don't think about that. And we have some features which aren't used by anyone. And we're like, oh, what is wrong? Like, it's okay, we can leave them there, but we don't think about the cost impact on the support teams who still have to support those features. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, it takes a bit of humility, right? You launch a product, it's your baby for the extended period of time. You get it launched and out into the world. It's really hard to acknowledge that it wasn't exactly what the customer was looking for, or the usage didn't land, or the benefit set didn't land of that feature. It takes a lot of humility and growth and maturity to say, hey, here are the things I missed. And you understand what you missed by looking at how the customers are interacting with it, or they're not. You know, what are they saying about the product? You know, customers who put cases in on specific features, those are your favorite customers. The ones that don't say anything are your troubled places, because, you know, the opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is indifference. And so if you have a customer telling you that the product isn't working, don't think of that as they're trying to be a pain in the ass. You have to look at it, they're trying to make you better because they see value in what you're doing and what you're building. So you got to be humble, and you got to say, yes, this is working. No, it's not. And then what do you do when no, it's not? Do you sunset it? And that's a whole process. You have to be gentle with that too. It's not a matter of just saying, okay, as of this day, we're not supporting it. You have to be really gentle, because some customers will have adopted it. So you have to do a good, nice sunsetting process in collaboration with your care organization, because they're going to be where they're going to hear it the most.
That's great. You've given so many pieces of advice. Just to summarize some of them, like actions, I guess, for product managers is, you know, first go and talk to your support teams, then answer some tickets, look at those metrics that matter, help maybe cut the cost for your support team. So there's so many actions already. So we've digged a lot into the relationship between product and customer support, and you've been, I think, very enthusiastic. So now I want to ask a bit of a harder question, which is, okay, what's it truly like to work in customer support and community and academy and all that? What's the thing you don't really like?
I don't like when people refer to those experiences, which I consider the post-sales experiences, as, I've heard this in my career, quote, necessary evil, or a line item on my P&L, like our COGS or cost of goods sold. So I don't like working with those partners that refuse to see the value and the insights, what they could get from these teams, and instead just see it as something you have to have, or a cost or a line item on your P&L.
And I am sure that you tell them when they do so, you call them out, and that's your style. You mentioned it, you're like direct, and I'm totally in line with that. Maybe a personal question about your journey and your ascension to the C-suite. Did that style help you? What do you think? What people are looking for advice? Everybody wants to grow their career, right? What did that help you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's probably half and half. And believe me, I do have a filter. People don't think I do, but like 20% of the crazy that's in my head, I don't say. So I want to first call that out. But I think you have to have a certain personality to be in this side of the business, right? If you are someone that's prone to the emotions of others impacting you, you're going to be in trouble. And there's a difference, right? There's when somebody comes to you and when they come to support, they're usually, again, not in the best place. No one sends a case in to say everything's working as planned. Thanks, amazing. And your head of support usually doesn't show up when everything's perfect. So my job is to make sure that I'm listening to the customer and I'm acknowledging like the emotional state, right? This is frustrating. I understand this is not where we want to be, but then move forward with the substantive stuff. Right. So take the emotion, acknowledge it, and then move forward with all of the stuff we can do to get them into a better place. So I don't see my job as I take on thousands of issues or problems a week. Our team and people who survive and thrive in the care world and the customer experience design world are ones that see it as problem solving. I get 1,000 opportunities a week to talk to my customers and to solve a problem. We build strong connections there. There's a lot of trust. If they know something's wrong, that they can get it solved. That's what people want. The only thing I can guarantee, and I say this to all my customers, even into their CEO, CFO suites, the only thing I can guarantee in software is something's going to go wrong. And you want to pick the partner that you know will respond well and is there in the bad times and not just the good times. So I'm always about giving my personal cell phone out. Holidays are a thing of fiction because if our customers are using our products, then we're usually around, and not in a bad way. I love it. I wouldn't have to do it if I didn't want to. So I think that's the biggest piece. And so you have to be a little direct or hard to work in this space. And I think some people appreciate it and some people a little less so, I'll say. And that's cultural too, right? Different parts of the world. And I am blessed to work at a company now and companies in the past where I get to travel the world. I've been to Moscow in December. I just got back from India 4 days ago. So you just I have to temper my directness based on cultural appropriateness as well.
Great. And I must say, compared to Monday, I can tell you've recovered from the jet lag.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I needed the 4 days. I hope your listeners know that you almost made me do a podcast 12 hours after I landed. So everyone be careful. She is good. She'll keep you on task.
That's how valuable this interview is. Yeah, I'm learning so much. You've answered my question about what do you like the least about your role, and it was kind of a sideway answer, but I'll accept that. So maybe I'll ask it differently. What are the main challenges that your teams face?
Sure. Well, I think I'll stand by the answer a little bit with the biggest challenge we face is highlighting the value of these functions. They're not just a reactive cost to the company. They should be a proactive measure of what we're doing to the customer, and that can mean in many ways, what we're doing is impacting them and how we can improve it. So again, my challenge is working with people who don't see the forest through the trees and only see a line item of cost, and that they may be too focused on their process and not letting in the other insights that they could be getting around what it is they're trying to accomplish.
Right. And now we need to talk about it, because if I don't mention the word AI at least 32 times in each episode, nobody's listening. I mentioned earlier the high pressure for support teams. And one of the ways that maybe we could alleviate that is through leveraging AI. So I'm just interested in your thoughts in terms of, do you see things changing right now, or do you think things are going to change with AI? And I think when we say AI, most people think generative AI.
Yeah. But AI has been around a long time in this space. I mean, it's not nearly to the capabilities it is today, but people would be crazy to ignore the amount of repeatability, scalability, efficiencies that AI can drive. So it's really important in all of our roles to lean into what that means for us. And if you're worried about losing, like from my perspective, if you're worried about the human connection being lost with AI, then you're not doing it right. So I think back to the 1900s. My kids love when I remind them that I graduated in the 1900s. But we were doing things from a phone perspective, like natural language. Now, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should as well, right? So natural language, has come a long way in the 20 years, but people still talk about it, make jokes about yelling into a phone, like, did you say Philadelphia? Like, no, I said free of charge, or whatever it is. AI is not enhancing your customer experience. You got to be honest with it and pull it back. But AI is going to be huge in our space. And from a cost perspective, if you're dealing with a lot of things within your customer care organization that are simple enough that can be done with a bot or something like that, then you're not doing something right. If it's so simple to answer, where an AI could replace a human in a support interaction, then why aren't you fixing it upstream, right? Why isn't the product evolving to fix that issue versus just moving into the AI space or into the replacement? That's what people get worried about, especially in my area. People are like, oh, they're not going to need humans anymore. But that's not true, because you need to listen to the customers and react to how they're using the AI that you're using to improve their experience. And if it isn't improving their experience, then you're doing something wrong. And I'm lazy. I always say that. The reason I'm so straightforward and I don't lie, it's not because I'm a better human. It's because I'm lazy and I don't want to remember all the things that I lied about. And it's just easier to be straightforward and tell the truth. And so what I would say is that if you haven't gotten it right, be humble again with yourself and admit it's not working and try something else.
Good. And one of the other technologies that could change also customer experience as a whole is virtual reality, or maybe augmented reality as well. Do you see, I guess maybe it applies more to physical things. You can help somebody like fix something over the phone because you can see what they see and things like this. But do you see any application in your field, like in software?
Absolutely. I mean, so I was part of a team in 2009 that launched something that was revolutionary to the end consumer, which was the ability to remotely access your computer and provide diagnostic and repair. And at that time, people thought it was witchcraft, because, and in my world today, I work B2B, but back then it was B2C. So you had every end customer using a computer, but you could see, older people panicking on how are you controlling the mouse on my screen. And so that was something that we had to change manage for customers. I don't see that stopping. We should be using it to make our customers' journey much simpler and smoother. And yes, that could mean that we lose some of the people doing some of the functionality, but we should be applying that knowledge that person has to another part of the business. So I don't see it as scary. I do see it as an evolution that we just have to lean into. And we've seen so much over the last 20 to 25 years that I've been in this space that nothing is surprising me. And the human touch is still the most critical thing these days, because you have to be able to apply some of what as a human to what's going on with a customer, because they too are human.
And I guess this is for using those I'm going to say, stop saying those technologies in your work. I'm thinking as a product manager, there are so many jobs in the market at the moment for AI product manager. And if we go back to what you said at the beginning of this episode, where we're thinking about the impact of what we launch on support teams, do you fear that maybe with all those new AI products, you're going to have lots of support tickets of people asking, why did it give me these results? And I don't understand. And is it biased? And it's going to be a whole new type of support request.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to trust. If customers and end users don't trust your products because they don't understand how it's working, that's going to be an issue. And they will come and seek support. They'll come and seek answers, and just knowledge overall as to how it's impacting their business. But, it's just like any new technology. I didn't trust that texting would be a thing back in 1999 when I got my first cell phone. I was like, who's going to take the time to text when you could just pick up the phone? And now if somebody calls you, you're questioning what's going on, and there's got to be something wrong if someone's calling. So to me, it's just another evolution of how we can focus the human energy on different things and allow technology to take some things off our plate. So it used to be maybe manually going in to see how many times a feature was accessed. Now you have tons of tools that can tell you in a split second how long something's been used, by who, for what. All of those breadcrumbs are now made available in seconds, but it's that knowledge that you get in those seconds that still takes the human touch to move to the next level.
Great. So we're going to wrap up, and you've given lots of nuggets of things to do. But let's say as a product manager, I've been very inspired, and I have. What is the one thing I can do tomorrow, go to work and think, okay, I'm going to do something to better collaborate with my customer care team. What is the one thing that you'd recommend they get started with?
Okay, so I can't do one thing, but I can do 1A, 1B. So 1A, if you're listening to this and you can't remember the name, or you don't know the head of your customer care organization or your support leads, go make a new best friend at work. So if you don't know it, which I'm guessing most folks probably won't know, but if you do, congratulations, you're one step on the journey. If you don't, go introduce yourself and make a new best friend at work. And then don't see, be a true partner and a collaborator. And don't think of it as a necessary evil or a cost on the line within your P&L. It's critical for you to be successful in your role to truly listen to the voice of the customer. And that voice of the customer is no louder than anywhere else than in your support and care organizations.
Perfect. I love that. It makes me think, I don't know the name of this person in my new organization, but there's 80,000 people there, so it's okay.
Yeah. You just got to start with one new best friend.
Yes. Okay, so if people have been listening and they've got maybe further questions, they want to know more about you and your organization, how can they reach out to you?
So I'm really good about my LinkedIn messages, so feel free to go find me there. And we can take it from there. And obviously you have my information, and I would give out my personal email, but then I have to acknowledge that it's at Yahoo, that I got in 1995, and I will not let it go. And I'm not ashamed. I'm very proud. So yeah, LinkedIn first, and then we can go from there.
Good, perfect. LinkedIn, you didn't say phone call, so we're good. Thank you so much, Anne, for taking the time, especially after all the traveling you've been doing. It's been a great conversation, really enjoyed it. And I'm sure all the PMs who have been listening, and maybe other people in the organization, marketing teams as well, and CS and all of that, have found great value in this episode. So thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. If you have suggestions for topics and guests, or any feedback, you can write to Magali Pellissier at hotmail.fr.